Welcome back, everyone. I am incredibly pumped you're joining us for this explainer today because, well, we are tackling something that literally dictates almost every single aspect of your daily life. Seriously, whether you realize that or not. Let's just dive right in. Think about it. Your morning routine, your commute, even how you automatically react to a stressful email. How much of that is you actually making a conscious choice, and how much is just your brain running entirely on autopilot? Today, we're going to completely unpack the hard neuroscience behind how we build, how we maintain, and maybe most importantly, how we finally break our habits. Okay, this is wild. It's actually estimated that a staggering 70% of our waking behavior is entirely habitual. 70%! I mean, that is huge. That means the vast majority of what you do every single day isn't born from active, in-the-moment decision-making. No, it's essentially pre-programmed. Habits literally make up an enormous part of exactly who we are.
So, if habits are really that dominant, how long does it actually take to build a brand new one? We've all heard the pop psychology tropes, right? Some gurus out there say it takes exactly 18 days. Others absolutely swear by the magic number of 21 days. And then, you have those folks who argue it takes 30 or even 60 days of grueling, grinded-out repetition. But what's the truth? Does it depend on the specific habit you're trying to form, or is it more about you, the individual? Well, prepare to be a little surprised by the number 254. Yep. According to a landmark study published back in 2010 by a researcher named Lally, forming the exact same habit can take anywhere from 18 days to as many as 254 days. It is entirely dependent on the individual. That's right, some people might completely lock a habit in within a few weeks, while others, for the exact same behavior, might need over 8 months to make it stick. But hey, here is the really reassuring part. If you struggle to form one specific habit, it absolutely doesn't mean your brain is broken or that you can't form other habits easily. People are just highly variable.
Which perfectly brings us to our first main area, the science of starting. Let's look at how we actually initiate habits.
Now, if we want to speed up this whole habit formation timeline, we really have to look at how our nervous system actually learns. Basically, it all comes down to a shift in our memory systems. In neuroscience, we generally distinguish between two main types of memory. First up, we have episodic memory. This is your ability to recall a particular set of past events, like what you ate for dinner yesterday, or a specific conversation you have with a friend. But then we have procedural memory, and this is where habits live. Procedural memory is all about holding in mind the specific sequence of things that need to happen for a certain outcome to occur. Think of it like a recipe or a strict protocol. It's the specific sets, reps, and laps of a workout. To adopt a new habit, you have to consciously push your brain into that mindset of procedural memory.
But, as you probably know, getting into that procedural memory state is tough. Why? Well, it's because of what neuroscientists call limbic friction. Think of limbic friction as the barrier or that heavy internal resistance you feel when you're just trying to transition into the mindset of procedural memory to get a new habit going. Honestly, it's the monster we have to defeat just to get off the starting line. So how exactly do we overcome this limbic friction?
This brings us to our first incredibly practical tool, visualization. But wait, hold on, this is not about sitting in a lotus position with your eyes closed trying to deeply manifest your future. No, it's way simpler than that. Let's use an easy example, like wanting to build the habit of making a morning espresso. To overcome that limbic friction, you simply think through the exact, specific sequence of steps required. Step 1, walk into the kitchen. Step 2, turn on the espresso machine. Step 3, draw the espresso. You are literally just walking your brain through the recipe from start to finish. And the incredible power of this tiny mental exercise? It really cannot be overstated. The scientific literature on this is remarkably robust. Just walking through those procedural steps in your mind, literally even just once with your eyes wide open, drastically reduces that limbic friction. It shifts people toward a much higher likelihood of performing that habit regularly. And not just on day 1, but in the days and weeks that follow. By mentally rehearsing the recipe, you are directly priming your brain's procedural memory. Okay, moving on to section 2, mastering the task bracket and locking those habits in. So we've talked about starting a habit, right? But how do we actually make it stick? Well, to lock a habit in so deeply that it becomes practically automatic, we have to look at a brain area called the basal ganglia. This is a set of neural circuits involving go and no-go actions. And within these circuits lies an incredibly powerful concept called task bracketing. Essentially, task bracketing refers to specific neurocircuits devoted to framing the events that happen just before you initiate a habit and just after you terminate it. It acts as a sort of neural marker or a fingerprint for the habit.
Notice that it's not actually about the execution of the habit itself, but the events framing it, the brackets around the task.
The really crucial point here is that task bracketing is the absolute secret to creating what we call context-independent habits. When the neural circuits for task bracketing become deeply, deeply embedded, your habit becomes robust. It means you are going to execute that habit regardless of the context around you. You'll do it even if you didn't get a good night's sleep, even if you're super distracted, or even if you are totally emotionally overwhelmed by other things happening in your life. The habit becomes hardwired to a specific time or sequence rather than to how you happen to feel in that exact moment.
To make this a bit more concrete, think about what we can call the brushing teeth effect. Brushing your teeth is the ultimate perfectly bracketed habit. For most of us, this happens completely regardless of our mood. It's reflexive. Even if everything in your life is going completely wrong and you got a terrible night's sleep, you are still going to carry out the behavior of brushing your teeth before you leave for work, right? You've placed a high-value assessment on it being essential, and your brain's task bracketing just ensures it happens reflexively.
But how do we actively build these brackets for the new habits that we actually want to adopt? Well, it involves a specific brain region called the dorsolateral striatum. Think of engaging this area kind of like warming up your body before a big workout. When the dorsolateral striatum is engaged, your nervous system is completely primed and oriented toward the execution of a habit. You are effectively casting a massive spotlight around a specific bin of time, basically saying to your brain, hey, something important is happening right here, and then you get to consciously insert whichever habit you want to perform. And this brings us to what might be the ultimate hack for sticking to really hard habits: rewarding the bracket. Let's say you have a super hard time getting in 30 to 60 minutes of mid-morning Zone 2 cardio. Don't just focus on the running itself. Focus on the onset and the offset. First, positively anticipate the hard start. Really lean into the effort of just getting out the door. Then, explicitly think about how great you are going to feel immediately afterward. Try to subjectively reward yourself for the entire experience. You are actually training your dopamine system to reward the task bracketing process itself, not just the physical execution of the habit.
All right, let's pivot to our third and final section: how to break bad habits and dismantle those unwanted sequences.
We've spent a lot of time learning how to wire things in, but what about dismantling a habit we desperately want to stop? Interestingly, the neuroscience suggests an approach that flips traditional advice entirely on its head. Usually we're told to obsess over identifying the specific state of mind or the exact trigger that led to the bad habit, right? But the real secret? It's to intercept the immediate aftermath. You see, the window of time right after you execute a bad habit is a highly unique opportunity because the very neurons responsible for generating that bad behavior are still highly active.
Let's break this down. Say your bad habit is reflexively picking up your smartphone when you really should be doing focused work. At T1, you grab the phone. Then at T2, you catch yourself, you feel that pang of disappointment, and you put it back down. Now, instead of just trying to force yourself right back to work, which, let's be honest, is incredibly difficult because those distraction neurons are still firing away, you move to T3. You immediately insert a completely different, positive, adaptive behavior. Maybe you go drink a big glass of water, or you do 5 minutes of breath work, or even a quick language learning exercise on a different app. You actively step away and execute a new, positive action.
By doing this, you are actually creating what the scientific literature calls a double habit. You are intentionally linking the execution of a bad behavior directly in time to a good behavior. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but you are creating a deliberate temporal mismatch in your brain. When you immediately follow that bad habit with a new, positive action, you are recruiting entirely new neural circuits. And as the research notes, doing this helps to somewhat dismantle the sequence of firing associated with the bad behavior. You are effectively scrambling the neural code of the bad habit. It's like throwing a wrench in the gears. Because of this scrambling, the next time you find yourself heading toward that bad habit, your brain will recognize it much more readily, making the urge far more apparent and way easier to stop in its tracks. So we've covered a ton today. We've talked about the sheer volume of our lives that are governed by habits, how to overcome limbic friction with simple procedural visualization, the massive power of task bracketing to make behaviors basically bulletproof, and that incredible double habit hack for scrambling bad behaviors. The neuroscience here is entirely clear. You absolutely have the power to consciously rewire your basal ganglia. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final deeply practical challenge to think about. What positive action will you use to scramble your worst habit?